Hello and welcome to the second lecture, Introduction to Design Thinking of the online course Design Thinking for Engineers. In this, we'll be talking about the principles of design thinking, the mindsets of a design thinker, and very importantly, the design thinking process, methods, and tools. So, if you see the designer's paradox, this is very often spoken of, and basically, a user needs just a bike and a ramp, but then the client over here specifies it in such a manner that the person who's provides the solution comes up with a very huge design, unnecessarily imagines a lot, brings up a lot of solutions, but basically the user just needs a bike and a ramp. So we often come up with huge ideas, right? For example, when we talk with our friends, we always come up with a very huge ideas of doing amazing projects and stuff, but then the one thing you don't realize is that, is a project really necessary, or is so much investment and thought process really necessary for that project? If you think about it deeply, the answer is no, because modern problems don't require modern solutions. They need ultra old and ancient solutions, trust me. If you don't know about the history of a particular device or an equipment, trust me, you can't go further than that. You need to understand the history of a device, because at the end of the day, if the device that's working today malfunctions, you need to go back to the history and find out the old designs, right? So, a design principle has a lot of stuff included in it. For example, this diagram over here. So, basically, all the customer defined in a different manner. For example, the customer over here just needs a swing, but then that's how he explains it. How the project leader understands about the project is different, and how the analyst designed it is again different. See, the design varies from step to step. For example, the programmer, the beta tester, and the business consultant over here, and how the customers was built here. And see, the design varies from person to person, as I told earlier. For example, if you're going to speak to a programmer, this is what a programmer would think of. He would try to keep the bugs as low as possible, whereas a businessman would want to acquire a customer with all his great will. So you need to understand the customer first, and then approach it in a customer centric manner, a human centered approach, which I will be talking about later. So this is Tim Brown, the CEO of IDEO, one of leading design thinking company. According to him, design thinking is a human centered approach. Note the point, it's a human centered approach to innovation that integrates the need of people, the possibilities of technologies, and requirements for business. I am repeating it twice because these are really good uh, things you need to remember: the need of the people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. So, this is a human centered approach, and the entire concept of design thinking revolves around the customer. For example, we have seen a lot of people who work in the startup field. They interact with the people a lot, whereas the other set of people, they come up with an idea, they lock themselves for another 3 or 4 months, they come out with a prototype. That's not how design thinking works. You need to interact with the people a lot of times, get their feedback, get their the problems they face, the solutions they expect. So you need to the interaction is the key in design thinking. Whereas the other set of people, as I told you earlier, they lock themselves up, they work day and night, but it's of no use. They don't come up with a solution that are designed for the people. They come up with solutions that they expect to be a problem for the people, a solution to the problem of the people. So that is the difference between design thinking and a traditional thinking. So what design thinking is not is, it doesn't mean that design thinking is only for creative people. You also can develop your design thinking skills Maybe at the end of this online course, you could have developed your design thinking skills by looking at the various use cases that I'll be talking about. And you can, it's not a narrow equation to aesthetics and craft. This is a very broad aspect. This is not a narrow equation at all. And design thinking is not just a brainstorming session. Design thinking is a much more broader aspect to developing a prototype. And again, as I told you earlier, design thinking is not a one-day process that can be solved within 24 hours. It's a repetitive process. You need to go to the customer, get that feedback, prototype, again go to the customer, test it, get that feedback, come back, prototype it. So it's a long process, and it's not a process to replace analytical problem solving. There's nothing about problem solving in this design thinking. Of course, you do solve the problems, but you don't need any analytical skills to solve the problems. And again, design thinking is not the silver bullet for all types of problems. Design thinking is applicable only for certain situations. Design thinking has not yet been proved in the case of chemicals and food technology type of problems. It has been addressed for a lot of other mechanical, civil, electrical, electronics, and a lot of other problems. And you cannot, any any process is not universal, right? Most of the things is developed for a particular approach, and design thinking is one such approach that has solved the problems of a lot of fields of engineering and science, but it doesn't mean that it's universal. So basically, what is design thinking? Design thinking is just a mindset. As I told you earlier, it's not a narrow equation of aesthetics and craft. It's just a mindset, and it helps you to solve problems creatively. You don't need to be a creative person, but you need to have a creative thinking. You need to, for example, I'll explain that later. Again, it's a human-centric approach. Design thinking starts with the people, not the lenders, not the borrowers, not the stakeholders, not the customers, not the clients or the users. It starts with the people. You go to the people, you interact with the people, you understand, you empathize about the problems they face. They use this quote, right, to get into the boots of the people. This is a very powerful quote upon which design thinking is built upon. And this process is creative, iterative, and practical. It's iterative because it's a constant cycle. You need to keep working on your project, you need to keep evolving it to further stages. And it's a human centric design, as I told you earlier. So that's this what's this, a match like thing, a business problem and a human problem. Let's see over here. How can we increase conversion sites on rates on our site? So it's matched here with what's the easiest way to help users figure out if our product fits their needs and encourage them to buy. I guess you can understand what the human problem here is. If you want to retain a lot of traffic to your site, it's going to be a business problem. But then a human problem is, which would be the easiest way so that the people in your website stay on your website for a longer period of time. You need to make your website more interactive. These are a few examples to the human-centric design. And how can we lower the number of calls to technical support? This can be solved with the human problem of how can we keep our product from frustrating the users. So you need to think from the human problem side, not from the business problem. For example, let's say you're going to buy a machine, a water purifier, say, let's say AquaGuard. Let's say you're going to buy an AquaGuard. You don't want the AquaGuard to keep malfunctioning at a constant interval of time, right? You want the machine to keep working for, let's say, a period of 2 or 3 years without any service requirements. So if you are going to design a product on that large scale, if it's going to operate for 2 or 3 years, you need to first think of what's the various issues that are being caused and what are the various things that you as an engineer can provide to improve the design of the AquaGuard. And let's see the other business problem here. How can we grow our core audience? See, thinking like that is a business problem. But then, how can we satisfy the people so that they are grateful for our product is a human problem. So, everything in design thinking involves a human centric design. So, in a human centered approach, the various principles are desirability, feasibility, and viability. What's viability? It's the financial viability, and feasibility is how it can be organized easily. And what's the desirability? Understanding what the people require at the moment. So this is the difference between traditional and design thinking. In traditional thinking, you'll be aiming for a flawless planning, right? But then in design thinking, you'll be pushed through a various steps wherein you'll be constantly failing at each step. Wantedly, you need to fail so that you can refine your design in a much better way. So your main aim would be to fail fast, whereas in traditional thinking, it would be to avoid the failure. So here you need to keep testing, whereas in traditional thinking, you need to keep analyzing. It's like, let's say I think the programmers would understand here. They say that think twice and code once, right? So that is going to be traditional thinking. Whereas think once and let's code it for an infinite time of things is design thinking. I guess you can understand the difference between traditional thinking and design thinking. And it's going to be about presentation, whereas it's going to be the design thinking is going to be about experiments. So you need to have a really good customer interaction in design thinking, whereas you don't need that much of customer research in traditional thinking. And design thinking is continuous, whereas traditional thinking is periodic. So this is the basic difference. If I need an answer of 8, a design thinker would come up with 4 plus 4 or 2 plus 6 or 4 into 2 with infinite possible sequences. But then a traditional thinker would just come up with the so-called correct answer. So this is the difference between a traditional thinker and a design thinker. So this graph over here, we have two parts of our brain, right? One is going to be your analytical thinking, and the next, the left part is going to be your intuitive thinking. So a design thinking must use both the part of the brain. He must think analytically as well, and he must have that intuition. So it's going to be about intuitive thinking as well as analytical thinking. You need to switch between the rational and the intuitive thinking parts. So when dealing with an ill-defined problem, using a mix of both the brains is very useful here. Excuse me. So what does design thinking helps you learn? What do you learn from design thinking here? Let's see. How to optimize the ability to innovate. At the end of this course, I'm sure that I would have helped you to become more innovative and to diverse ideas of innovation, and to connect with the customers and the end users by targeting their actual requirements. You need to solve you need to solve the problems of your customers and not just come up with solutions of your own. Let's see in the industry about the various applications of design thinking. It's used by Starbucks, Apple, Adobe, P&G. They use a lot of all these companies use design thinking. How Adobe used to have these CDs that are being sold in the shop, and there would be a product key written on it. So that was the initial stage of Adobe, but then they changed it to a cloud-based service model, a subscription model, so that you can get those subscription in the online basis, base, right? So that was a really good innovative solution by Adobe, so that people need not have to go to the shop to buy the subscription thing. And again, if you had been to an Apple store, you would have noticed that they try to keep the customers in the store as much as possible. There'll be the stores are designed around activities and not products. They don't care about the products. So what's the thing? It will be more profitable retail store per square foot. So this is an business advantage for them when compared to the other showroom models. So how does a design thinker think basically? For that, we need to look at the quote of Albert Einstein. We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. That's a really deep message by Albert Einstein. If you look into this message, he says that you have already created a design of a product. If you are going to think about the same design, it's not going to solve any problems. The projects you do on daily basis, for example, one really good project that most of the engineers do is this smart Aadhaar card based electronic voting machine. But then is the project really worth it? No, it is not. Why? Because it can never go further. Can you go and approach the election commission of India? No, we can't do that, right? So it must be a really I don't know how to put it in words. It's not useful doing such projects. Many people come to me, ask me, what's the use of this project? What's the innovation in your project? When I ask the same question to them, they don't have any answers. So that's the issue with the projects that we do in our campus. Most of the projects we do doesn't have this thing called innovation. So the difference between the problem focused and solution focused approach is that the solution focused approach focused on finding the solutions, coming up with the something constructive to effectively tackle a problem, whereas the problem based thinking, it tends to fixate on obstacles and limitations. So in a case study, how a group of scientists and a group of designers tackle a problem. This was a case study carried out by Dr. Brian Lawson of University of Sheffield. So he gave them a task to create one layer structures from a set of colored blocks. The perimeter of the structure had to use either as many red bricks or as many blue bricks. The rules regarding placement relationship of some of the blocks were unspecified. So what was the observation? Scientists focused on identifying the problem, whilst the designers prioritized the need to find the right solution. So the scientists adopted a technique of trying out a series of designs which used as many different blocks and combinations of blocks as possible as quickly as possible. Thus, they tried to maximize the information available to them about the allowed combinations. If they could discover the rule governing which combinations of blocks were allowed, they could then search for an arrangement which would optimize the required color around the layout. Whereas the designers, on the other hand, selected their blocks in order to achieve the appropriately colored perimeter. If this proved not to be an acceptable combination, then the next most favorable colored block combination would be substituted. So whereas in the case of scientists, they were constantly thinking and analyzing the solution, whereas the designers, they started doing the entire project. So this is the difference between the analytical thinking and design thinking. So it's an iterative approach. You are at stage A, you go to stage B, or maybe you need to come back to stage A, work on the same stage, or you go to stage C. Again, you need to be coming back to the stage A. This will be very useful for the customers because their product at the end of the day becomes more refined. You build a product today, you take it to the customer, they don't like it, you come back, work on the project, you take it to the customer the next day, they like it 50%, the next day they like it 60%. So the product becomes more useful to the consumer because they achieve 100% liking towards the project. You don't force your project on, you don't force your solutions or project on people. You design the problems, you design the solutions to the problems of people. David Kelly, the founder of IDEO, the co-founder, design thinking is not the cookbook where the answer falls out at the end. It's messier than that. It's a big mass of looping back to different places in the process. So this is a huge sentence. I'll rephrase it for you in the form of an example. Let's say that you're going to cook a dish today. Let's say something like a dal. So what do? You take the ingredients, put inside, put all those things, pour water, you start cooking. What if it doesn't turn out to be good? You don't start over, right? You try to force your solutions to your, let's say, your parents who are going to taste the dish. Whereas in design thinking, you'll be starting it over with another set of combination and another set of ingredients. So that's the difference between design thinking and normal approach. Analysis versus synthesis. Analysis is the process of breaking down something substantial into multiple fragments, whereas synthesis is combining these fragments to design an entire product. So how do designers think? It is to be noted that analysis and synthesis are complementary to each other. It's very obvious. So design thinkers have to synthesize based on the analysis they have done, and the analysis will then follow based on what has been synthesized to verify the results. So the thing over here, analysis goes to synthesis, comes back to analysis, goes to synthesis. So here, this is the cycle. I guess you can understand right now. So analysis and synthesis can be traced to divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So in divergent thinking, you have the answer from which you can derive you have a particular thing from which you can derive or extrapolate stuff. Whereas in a convergent thinking, you have a lot of fragments which you put together to find the answer to a particular solution, to a problem. So how do designers think? They first start with the problem, sensing, define it. They first diverge it. They evaluate the various ideas. First, they list out the various possible solutions, evaluate each and every solution, not by just analysis, but by actual experimentation. And then they come out with a decision-making situation and then mobilize it for action and then review it. Again, they come back to the any particular stage if they have made any mistake. And at the end of the day, a really good human-centered solution will be ready. So design thinking is a mindset and not a toolkit or a series of steps. I guess it's a very powerful statement. It's a mindset. Design thinking is a mindset. It must not be confused with let's say, I guess you guys would have heard of this word Six Sigma. Black belt, Six Sigma, green belt. So Six Sigma is a set of rules. It's a practice, whereas design thinking is a mindset. So we are in the end of the second lecture. So design thinking mindsets, you need to show. You don't tell people. You show people of what you have created. You focus on the human values. You embrace experimentation. You just don't think. You start doing stuff. You are towards action and not thoughts. You are a radical collaboration. You don't work alone by shutting yourself into a room and start working on your project. You need to be mindful of your process. You need to keep thinking about the process. And you need to have the clarity of thoughts. So this is an entire process of design thinking. So in the next lecture, I'll be bringing a lot of examples about the design thinking process. So thank you till then. Bye bye.